So going into this game, we'd been fortunate enough to have played York9 twice in pre-season down in the Dominican, and I'm sure that gives us an idea of how they would try to play, and I'm sure they felt the same about us. We'd also got to watch them against Forge in the opener the week prior, and we weren't sure whether they were going to occupy in a 3-4-3, which they ended up playing, or dropping in a 10 and playing more of a 3-5-2 with a 10 just resting in behind the twin strikers. Manny Aparicio had been sent off against Forge, so we had a feeling that they would play with a front three, which was interesting because the way we'd lined up, we knew that we would be man for man with them, with a screener in front. In knowing what York9 were good at, we knew they would like to move the ball. We knew they're a fit and physical team because we'd had a couple of competitive games. But we knew their front three were a bit of a threat because they had pace and power, and we wanted to try and stop the supply into them. And also by doing so, we wanted to starve them of the ball. So, the lineup on May 4th, we went with Marco Carducci in goal, who's a local Calgary lad. I think it was important for him. DOMINICK ZATOR, another local Calgary lad. We went with a back three of him, Jay Wheeldon in the middle, and Joel Waterman on the left. Now, Mason Trafford would have fit somewhere in here as well, but he'd sustained an injury and he'd been a key signing for us in the off-season, but he had an injury just prior to the kickoff. We wanted to put someone in front and keep us in possession of the ball, and we thought the best that we had was Elijah Adekubi. Again, another local lad, and it almost gives us that diamond shape in build-out, and if you look at it with the goalkeeper, and the back three creates a diamond there, and then the back three and the hold in mid, gives us a diamond in our build-out, and Elijah then would screen the front three in a defensive action. And then in front of him, on the right, Dean Northover, another Calgary lad, we felt give us good balance. He's comfortable on the ball, he's very good defensively 1v1. And out on this side, we went a little bit more attacking with Jose Escalante, primarily more of a winger, but we wanted him in this wing-back position to give us natural width and give us an outlet when we're in possession. Ahead of Elijah, we had Nick Ledgerwood and Julian Boucher. And these two may interchange. Sometimes he's that way, and sometimes we come in that way and rotate through the midfield. But what we wanted here was we wanted an engine room and quality on the ball, and both of them had really good experience. I mean, Nick Ledgerwood, he's a Lethbridge native, and was coming back home, if you will, in a city where he started his professional career, and we captained the side that day. And Bush, had valuable MLS experience, so we felt that was a really good midfield three to deal with whatever they had and keep us in possession of the ball, as well as obviously Jose out here. Then we opted for twin strikers. And we went with Dominic Malonga here and Jordan Brown on that side, but yes, they would switch. And the reason they worked quite well together was that Jordan Brown was one of those strikers that liked to run in behind and run off the shoulder of defenders, whereas Dom Malonga, he likes to receive the ball into feet. And when he receives the ball into feet, that opens up a space for somebody to run in behind and create a bit of chaos with movement. But in doing so, we went into the game thinking, these are a good side. Both the games we'd had against them in the Dominican had been 1-goal games, that we were on the receiving end of the win. But we knew that it'd be tight. So we knew that first game there may be a bit of nervous energy floating around. We didn't know what the crowd would be like. We'd built a stadium and got it ready. We just hadn't had the roof. There was stony trail, there was chaos going on. So we knew there'd be a first feeling for everything. So what we wanted to do at the very start was make sure that in possession of the ball, we kind of run the rule a little bit and just kept the ball moving and made sure they were tired. So if you watch, in the first 15 or 20 minutes, we moved the ball quite nicely. And then what that did was it allowed us just to breathe and open up the game a little bit. So as the game plan unfolded, what we were fortunate with is we had a goalkeeper in Marco Carducci who's very comfortable with the ball. Jonathan Wheeldon, who's a fantastic defender, but also very comfortable in possession. we had Joel Waterman, who actually was a midfielder that we converted to a centre-back. And we like him back there because, you know, he was able to quarterback the possession. He jumps into the midfield to give us an overload centrally. And DOMINICK ZATOR, and DOMINICK's, you know, a terrific modern day centre back that, you know, as the season went on, was able to play wide, or he could play inside, or he could play inside and a back, a central too. But the versatility there allowed us to try and create overload. So as they did line up and went with a 3, what we knew then was we needed to create, you know, using our goalkeeper, a little 5v3 in our build-out phase. So if they started to press high, you know, we knew we could use Marco, and then we'd try and get Elijah Adekubi into one of these half spaces, or the width with Dean Northover and Jose Escalante here. As it happened, because we moved the ball very, very quickly, it forced York9 just to be a little bit more compact around the midline and give us a lot more possession in what we call our zone 2. So we quarter it off to zone 1 is our half of the half, zone 2, zone 3 and zone 4. And what we did well in the first half was try and find, you know, Elijah would drop in and we'd get in there, or we'd move the ball around, and as they would step up, it would then create these little spaces here for Elijah to come in, or we often had, you know, Nick Ledgerwood would drop into these wide areas, which then created a little rotation for Jose Escalante to come in there. And then we knew with Dom, because this midfielder would then, well, do I go there? Do I screen here, or do I go there? And Dom Malonga would drop into these spaces here, which now created these great little diamonds that we were trying to do. And Joel Waterman could step up with the ball. And then you got Jordan Brown threatening in behind, or Julian Boucher getting close. And now we could move our play just somewhat a little higher and then create some opportunities. And you notice probably in the first half, you know, we had a few half chances where, you know, Jose Escalante's cutting from this position here, Dom Malonga's got into a position here, and I think Jordan Brown and Joel Waterman had some, you know, shots on target, which, you know, was good for the overall confidence, because then it said, right, okay, let's stick to the game plan and let's be patient in possession. Defensively then, we knew, you know, Nathan Ingham actually played for me and the Calgary Foothills for a few games in the 2018 season. And we knew he was comfortable with the ball. He liked to have the ball at his feet. He liked to move the ball out as well. And I knew under Jimmy Brennan, his teams will want to play. So what we had to be careful of is we wanted to try and restrict their service getting into their front 3. So whether that be, you know, in around the midfield area and into these, because it would also leave us 3v3, but we also had spoke with Elijah Adekubi on making sure he created a numerical advantage here, whilst Marco Carducci would cover the spaces in behind if they were to utilise their speed. So in doing so, what we wanted to try and do, because we had twin strikers, is we wanted to split the difference between their back 3. So both Jordan Brown and Dom Malonga were very good at this. Dom, you know, he's clever, you know, he's got that experience about him, so he would kind of just give you that false sense of security, whereas Brownie would be rapid and he would close down and force, you know, errors and have us pick it up here. So as they would play out, we wanted to try and force the errors and get inside goal side of the ball and make sure that there was no real outlets for them to pass, and then Dom would kind of cover that to keep it blocked, so then we could regain the possession and hopefully force a turnover or a counter-attack in these areas here. So this was leading into about the first 30 minutes of the game. We'd started to put our footprint on the game. We'd created a few half chances going into it, had a few set plays. And we knew going into this game that it would be tight. So, you know, something that Martin Nash is really good at as well is creating some attacking set plays. So leading into the week, we'd had a game plan, strategy, tactics with the ball, without it. But, you know, Martin and Jordan, our coaching staff, had also worked on, you know, different movements, different set plays to try and draw them out, because York9 are a big side, so you've got to be able to move them. You know, what we had was Julian Boucher, a fantastic deliverer of the ball, would really whip in ball at speed. Jose Escalante with a left foot would take in swingers that day, because, you know, it was a bit of a blustery day, a bit snowy, so we wanted to put the pressure on the defenders and Nathan Ingham in goal, so we wanted to really put the ball in with pace. They'd occupied this 6-yard with 2 of their, you know, centre backs. I think it was Gasparato and Springer. They had their front post covered. So what we had with Jose, Jose just came a little short, as if it was on for the short play there. What that did is create an element of a gap there, because it split the difference between the two key headers of the ball. Everyone else was in a man-for-man coverage. We had Nick Ledgerwood on the edge there, and we kept security at the back with one of our centre-backs, Joel Waterman, with Elijah Adekubi screening there for any second phase, and obviously Marco back there. But what we had here was Malonga, Brown, ZATOR, Wheeldon, and Northover for if it was really deep. What we tried to do, as soon as Jose had moved, that created a space now that we wanted to pierce some layers. So then, Jordan Brown would get in there. Dom Malonga would then attack spaces where you could score. Zat makes that great run, which you'll see in the second half, where he really goes at pace and he's hard to track. And then Jay Wheeldon, who's very clever, would come around the back post just in case it was over to put it back across. And as it happened, as we've done that, it's missed this chaos here. Jay Wheeldon's at the back. He's used his height as an advantage to nod back across. Jordan Brown is in the right place at the right time, like all good strikers, to put it in the net, and 1-0. And we thought it was a fantastically worked set play. So we'd gone in at half-time, 1-0. We were very comfortable in possession. I think we'd put our imprint and hold on the game. We'd established how we wanted to dictate the terms. But in doing so, we knew, Jimmy Brennan's a very astute coach. He's got great experience in the game. We knew he'd have some changes up his sleeve, and, we obviously needed that second goal, because the longer it stayed at 1-0, the closer they were, and then they could throw everything at us going into, the last 10 or 15 minutes. So, what Jimmy did well then, he brought Absy off, who was playing at left wing back, and put Ryan Telfer out there, who, a fantastic player for them. He had his front three still of Austin Ricci here. He had Simon Adji and Cyrus Rollocks, and all of them had pace and power to hurt us. And we knew, any game, you can't dominate for 93 minutes or however long. You know there's going to be a wave where they would come into it. He brought in, with Absy going off and Telfer going out wide, he brought in Murafushi to go alongside Emilio Estevez, who are very comfortable in possession of the ball. Kept their back three of Springer, Gasparato and Gogarty, and Stevie Fulano over here, who, he's almost like another midfielder as well as a fullback. So we knew that their purpose in doing that, they were going to have some more of the ball. So what we had to do was we had to get our defensive press right. We had to try and suffocate them, and then we had to regain possession and dictate the terms. As it happened, probably the first 10 minutes of any second half is usually, back and forth as you're feeling each other out. It's like a boxing match where first few rounds you're just kind of getting a sense of your opponent. And then around the 55th minute, they started to get their lion's share of possession and started to push us a little bit further back and gain possession in our territory. And I just remember, I think there's one thing that probably sticks out and probably helped define who we are as a team. I think it was around the 60th minute, and I think there was a triple, maybe even a quadruple block on our goal line where they'd gone forward, they'd created chances. I think they had about 3 shots, and Zats gets a deflection on the first one. Marco Carducci goes down, Cyrus Rollocks puts it there. Jay Wheeldon comes off the line, blocks it off of his chest, and then it rebounds out to one of their midfielders, and Nick Ledgerwood just closes it down, boom, and we live to breathe another day. And I remember turning around to Nashi and going, that's us, and that's just who we were all season. Was as much as we celebrated the goals and the chances and the wins, those things were as equally important to us, the blocks, the saves, because they're as good as a goal. Because now suddenly, if it's 60 minutes, now it's 1-1, the game shifts on a pendulum. So we were looking for that second goal. Anytime you get a second goal, it gives the team insurance, you can breathe a little easier and then manage the game better. Now leading into this, we started to make our changes, because in about the 60th minute, you can see the fatigue starting to set in, because it's the first game, whether it be nervous energy or it takes a few games for players to reach their maximum. And Julian Bouchard put in some great work early. And we also wanted to do, put on an attacking option. So we brought in Sergio Camargo and adjusted our shape slightly, where we were playing, one man just off the front two, and had more 2 central midfielders where Nick Ledgerwood dropped to play alongside Elijah. And that was partly due to the fact that they were starting to get on their front foot. So we made our tactical adjustments. In doing so then, we had a couple of half chances. So, Jordan Brown could have scored right after the half around about the 48th minute. Nate Ingham's made a good save, and then Malonga's had this great chance where he's hit it. Nate's made another good save, and it's led to another corner. Now this time we're on the opposite side, so we knew with Jose Escalante, he's got this wand of a left foot, and he can really whip it in with pace. So we just adjusted our setup slightly. Now we had, Sergio Camargo, we left him outside instead of where, Jose was on the first goal. We left him just back post because we knew it was starting to really blow now a wind. So we wanted to really get across it. Dominic ZATOR, Malonga, Oliver Minatel, I think we'd brought on at that time as well for Jordan Brown. And then we had two just keep giving us security on there because we also didn't want to get caught on the counter, and we wanted a second phase, and then we were always doubled up in the back phase here. And what was great about this, with no distraction, it was just, the run of ZATOR was fantastic. He gets across this front man because without a man there was no one screening. So it was almost like an open door for him. And Jose just whips in this great ball, and Zats now just gets across the first man, which is, bread and butter stuff for what you want for your challengers. And he's headed it just straight into the top corner. And I always remember I think the visions will be ingrained in my memory forever. On the snowy day, the lads all go to him, he fist pumps, he's a local lad, he sticks it in the top corner, 2-0, and it just felt comfortable at that time because now we'd had a bit of insurance to manage the game from there on out. So after you score, you really want to just slow the energy of the game out. So it's like turn the temperature down, just moving the ball, take your time, just kind of kill the momentum of the opposition. That didn't quite work as well as we'd hoped, and maybe it was, York9, made their tactical adjustments. They brought on Gattas instead of Richie, that was trying to find these half spaces and a very threatening attacker. They had nothing to lose, so they started pushing players forward, forcing more, taking more risks, and it worked for them because, I think we scored in about the 77th minute or something, and then they scored, 6 minutes later in the 83rd minute. So it wasn't as long as we'd liked it to go, but they started moving the ball quickly. I think we jumped into attack here, and they caught us outnumbered. A bit of fast footwork by Emilio Estevez. He finds Simon Adji in here, and I think we were just scrambling to try and get some blocks in, and he ends up just putting it past Marco Carducci. But that then is not exactly what you want, because suddenly in the 83rd minute, and there's going to be injury time, you've got 10 minutes where you got to see out the game. So what we'd done just prior to that is we'd brought on Mara Stacchio for Nick Ledgerwood, who we felt, Nick had run his socks off. It was also, funnily enough, in the same game that Mason had pulled his injury, he started to feel tight. So he ran through the pain barrier for us on that day. I always remember when Ledge came off for Maro, he comes over and says, "Happy birthday, boss." And that was when we were in a good position at 2-0. But now it turned to 2-1. Those last 10 minutes are important, and York now had their tails up, and they were finding these passes, and we were trying to get close and compact. And I remember there was an opportunity, I think it was literally the 86th or 87th minute, and I think it was someone like Emilio Estevez that found it in this space here, and he's hit a cannon of a shot, and Marco's made a great save. And we're like looking at each other going, right, what other changes do we go? Do we now, slot into a back four to manage that? Or do we now go into, a flat three across the middle? But we also felt that, sometimes the best form of defence is attack. And we knew by them pushing, they were leaving themselves open. And lo and behold, we literally were able to find some spaces between Sergio, who was making clever runs now. Ollie was now dividing up here. We found some spaces in here, and we probably should have put the game to bed, because then Malonga's had this great chance up this end on the 87th minute where it just seemed to fan on the ball, and that would have just sealed the game, and then we could have breathed easy. But wasn't to be. We did see out the game because we then just started to slow down throw-ins, started to kill the time, kill the clock, and it was a memorable 2-1 win. One where I think we dominated the first half, and had to manage the second half. But I think there's nothing better than feeling 3 points and a win in front of your first ever home crowd.